Hey, Urban Spinsters, this is Sadia Sanders of urbanspinster.com, where we are creating our own agenda, dispelling societal myths, and redefining the word spinster. And today on the podcast is a guest, Mr. Gilbert Bao. And I was, I won't say introduced to virtually, but I was made known of Gilbert through Julie Reynolds Martinez, who is the creator of the Gray Area podcast. So shout out to Julie. And Julie and Gilbert are producing a 9-part series on his life called Afterlife. And I wanted to interview Gilbert myself because he spent some time at MacLaren Hall. And if you've been following me, I have been creating my own series around MacLaren Hall, or what some may call MacLaren Children's Center, depending on what decade you're speaking about. And Gilbert received a 24-year-to-life prison sentence for attempting to avenge a friend's shooting. And although no one was shot, no one died, he still received this 24-year-to-life sentence. And he is home now. So Gilbert is here, so we're going to talk to Gilbert. Thank you again for agreeing to be interviewed, Gilbert. How you doing today?
Oh man, I'm blessed. I'm lucky. You know, I'm one of the very few that are able to, have that opportunity to tell the story, because not everybody makes it out of prison. Not everybody makes it out of that past lifestyle that I came from. And especially not a lot of people made it out of MacLaren Hall, to be able to even sit here and talk about some of the experiences that took place there.
Now, when did you come home from prison?
I came home on November 28th, on Thanksgiving Day of 2019.
Okay.
So as of 5 days ago, I think, 5 or 6 days ago, I've been home for 3 years now.
So you came right before the pandemic.
Yes, I came home like months before, like about maybe 3 or 4 months, and I walked out of prison after 21 years incarcerated. I walked out in like within a few months, just a little bit that I was starting to get used to. It changed drastically, and I'm still making adjustments. It's all about adjustments.
Yeah, for sure. But can you imagine if you were still in prison during the pandemic?
I try not to ever imagine I'm ever there for anything. Yeah, I totally get it. Yeah, my co-defendant, he unfortunately he's still there. He walked me to the gate when I walked home, and because of his he has some different past felony convictions.
Mm-hmm.
His time was doubled, so he ended up with 55 to life. And actually, there's I was actually sentenced to 20 years plus a life sentence, which technically kind of rounds out to like 27 to life.
So how does that work when we hear a number and then to life? Like, how do they determine how much or how little time you're actually going to serve?
So the law defines, the penal code defines, as far as the sentencing, how the sentence is going to be applied. There's different types of life sentences. There's what they call life with the possibility. That's what I got. And it's calculated at 7 years. You're eligible to go for your first parole consideration hearing. Okay. That's life with the possibility. The next one is 15 to life. So after 15 years, you're eligible for your hearing. Then we have 25 to life. You're eligible for the hearing after 25. And then you have a few other ones that are like 27 to life. Usually that's because there was another crime added to the life sentence. Mine, I had a 20-year enhancement for gang and gun enhancement. So the enhancement sentence you have to do first when you get to prison. And when I went to prison, it was at 85%. So once I complete 85% of the 20 years, which is considered a determinate sentencing law, a DSL, once that sentence is complete, the Department of Corrections will send you a letter to the mail saying you have completed this sentence. You now will start your life sentence.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's horrible. So I started the life sentence after 85% of the 20 years. And excuse me personally, because of AB 261 passed in January 1st of 2018, it made me eligible because of my age during incarceration. It made me eligible after 15 years of incarceration, no matter how the sentence was calculated. So because I had been there 21 years, the state had 2 years to take me to a board hearing, and the board commissioners had to consider my age during the commission of the crime. And as that gets calculated, and depending on your behavior, is how they determine if they find you suitable. If you're found suitable, such as I was, it goes to the governor's office. The governor has 120 days to either sign the parole, reject it, or send it to what they call an in-bank. An in-bank is it goes to all the commissioners and they get a majority vote in your favor or a majority vote not in your favor.
Now, how old were you when you were sentenced?
I was 25 years old.
Okay.
16, but 25.
16 in the mind, huh?
I was 16 in the mind and 16 in the, developmental wise.
Mm-hmm.
I was 16. That's my opinion, but I was a lot more immature than a 25-year-old was.
So at what age did you become gang affiliated or active in the gang before all of that?
At the age of 13, which the gang enhancement law did not exist, and at the age of 13, I became an active gang member. And after I joined a gang, it was incarceration after incarceration. I was going in and out of the 3 different juvenile halls in LA County, a few of the camps, and eventually California Youth Authority, which is a state facility for underage youth. I went to Youth Authority for 3.5 years, came home, and then went back with a life sentence. So I had some history behind it.
Yeah, because I heard you say on the Gray Area podcast that you didn't think you were going to get charged for this shooting. And given all this history, how is it that you thought you weren't getting charged? And you're not white.
Yeah. So in the past, when I would get arrested when I committed a crime, I take responsibility for my part. When I would commit a crime, the way the legal system is especially in LA County, there's too many people. It overwhelms the court system. Mm-hmm. So the district attorney almost off the bat is going to come in and offer you a deal. Plead guilty to this charge, take this time, and you'll go home a lot sooner. Mm. So most of the time when the DA came in, I took the deal because it was either a lesser charge or is the lowest amount of time the judge can sentence me to. So I always took the deal. I never had been to a trial, and all the times I had ever been arrested, I'd never been to a full-blown trial. This time, I said, I didn't shoot nobody. There's no 911 call. There's no identified victim. They're stacking, the crime. They're making it really big in the beginning, like with a lot of charges. They gave me 5 charges 3 days after. Well, actually, I think it was the next day after I got arrested. They changed all my charges. The gang unit did. Mm. I got arrested for discharging a firearm and a felony evading, which I probably would have been sentenced to maybe 2 to 3 years. Half-time, I would have did maybe a year and a half and went home. So when I got arrested, I was like, that sounds right. When I get to court, a few days later, they take me down to downtown, and I'm like, I'm supposed to be in municipal court in East Los Angeles, behind the sheriff's station. But when they took me to the courthouse, I was there for a few hours. The sheriffs came in and said I was in the wrong courthouse. So they drove me in a police car downtown and took me to Criminal Courts Building, CCB. I think they changed the name of it now, but they took me downtown, appointed me a special prosecutor, hardcore DAs against gangs, I believe is the acronym. And I was given the special prosecutor, and I was told by a public, I want to say public pretender, but the public defender, he came in and told me that they changed the charges and that the gang unit would be the taking the lead role on the charges.
So
And
it seems like you're just getting kind of shuffled from here to here to here. You don't really have any say in who's representing you.
at the time, no. At the time, no. I still believe that they were just trying to stack up the charges to offer me the deal. I said they're probably giving me all these charges to give me like a higher sentence, not a life sentence, but I said, okay, there's 5 charges. It was attempted murder, the gang and gun allegation, assault with a deadly weapon, firing out a moving vehicle, and a felony evading. So I said, okay, they're making the charges like extreme charges that carry life sentence. The DA's probably not going to want to take me to trial with no victim, no witness. So I said, he's probably going to offer me like 10 years, 10 years with 85%. And I was willing to take it. Inside, I knew I was guilty. I did go over there. I did go over
there. The intent was there, even though it didn't.
But I just, my victim got away. The honest truth is my victim got away. It took me a long time to get to this truth because I denied it. I denied it for like over 10 years. But in prison, when I started to work on myself and I started to change, one of the big changes I had to do was face that reality. Is the system, and I have my own ideas on the fairness of the system, how it's applied, who it's applied to, geographical area, ethnicity, all of that stuff. There's obviously those factors, the historical factors, economical, all of these different factors come into play. And I had already understood that part, but I said there was no point on me continuing to evade the responsibility. Because once I take responsibility, then now I can look back and say, all right, now let's work on you taking responsibility for your part. Because I didn't just show up to society, in my opinion, looks at criminal crime punishment.
Right.
But something happened way before that. Like what goes on that makes it okay for Gilbert to get in a car with a weapon, go look for somebody to murder? What something had to happen, and that part never gets told.
Right.
That never goes into the trial. That never gets, the jury never hears that. Now let's go into the trial and let's go get all the history behind Gilbert. Let's go talk about when he was removed by CPS from the home. Let's talk about what was going on in the home. Let's talk about where you took him. You took him out of his home because there was drugs in my home with my mother, and then you put me in a place that was 10 times worse. You put me in MacLaren Hall, right out of the backseat of a cop car, right to MacLaren Hall. And then you have all this stuff going on around me, and you're not telling me nothing. You're putting me in a cell, locking me up. I hear kids crying. You're throwing them on the floor, putting them in cuffs. Like you go from that, and then the rest of my life, I'm going to these courts. For the rest of my juvenile life, I'm going through all the therapists, counselors, like, who's touching you? Is anybody, where do you sleep? I'm like, all these people are asking me all these crazy questions. I'm 8 years old. You think I want to be answering those questions? Like, don't you think, what effect do you think it had on me? Emotionally, development, psychologically, socially, like all these factors came into play. From that point forward, when I was 8 and I left MacLaren Hall, I just got in trouble for almost the rest of my juvenile life, all the way into adulthood, to age 25. I was in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. I was like, dropped out of school, raised by my grandmother, drugs in my home, alcohol in my home, violence in my community, violence in my own home. It's like, what do you think's gonna happen to a guy like me? So you want to look at me like I'm a criminal, I'm an animal, lock him up, give him the rest of his life in prison? Like, really? That's the best answer you could come up with? There's got to be something better.
Well, I mean, too, like you said, there's systemic racism in every system or every structure within our society. As I'm reading a book now, and it just goes all the way back to the 1800s as far as the child welfare system. children in this country were not considered, even though these children grow up and to be adults. Okay, so you have to take care of the children and their well-being mentally, physically, emotionally, because they're going to grow up and be adults. But that has never been the mindset when you're talking about child welfare. It was like, they're better, what is it, seen and not heard kind of thing. And if you were from a poor background, then it was even worse for you. And if you were not white, then it was even worse for you, because kids were sent to labor camps and all this kind of stuff if they were from poor backgrounds, orphaned, or whatever the situation is. And it really has not changed that much now, where you have child labor laws, but you're still kind of discarding children or not protecting them, and then expecting that by some miracle they grow up and be productive, when you've given them no type of resources, structure, or any of that. And a lot of times with domestic violence, it is perpetuated generation after generation. So I was wondering, because you did mention the fact that from age 8 you were in and out of these institutions and in the system, how much time do you think you spent in some type of state facility from when you were first removed from the home at 8 all the way until your prison sentence?
Probably, just guesstimating right now, probably somewhere between 28, 29 years. Throughout adding, I did that 121 year was the long one.
Mm-hmm.
I did 3.5 years before that, a year before that, and then there was a lot of 9 months, 12 months, or 10 months. Just there was a lot of months in between. And if I had to calculate them all up, it's a high number. There's definitely more incarceration in my history than there is that I've been outside of a cell.
Or even not even incarceration, but like with MacLaren Hall, even though it probably felt like incarceration.
Oh, that was locked up.
Yeah, you weren't accused or convicted of anything at that particular point, but you have been in some type of system or in state custody, let's say that, in some type of state custody since 8 all the way to now. When did you get out? You were 25 and you did 20 years, so you were 45?
I was like
when you came home?
I think 47 when I came home.
Okay.
I was 47 years old. Yeah, so it's more time in than more time out.
Mm-hmm.
And the disparities are definitely there. I worked inside a drug program for 13 years before I came home as a mentor. And I sat in many circles, therapy, counseling, and I would hear different people, different ethnicities tell me what they were there for. Like, I remember meeting this young kid. He was a white kid from like Ventura County, somewhere, I think Thousand Oaks, somewhere around there. And he was telling me that he was smoking weed with his friends. They started drinking. He gets in a fight with one of them, hits him. He hits him with a skateboard over the head. The kid dies, and they sent him to prison for involuntary manslaughter with halftime, 4 years with halftime. And he's sitting in my group complaining about his sentence. And it's not my role to like throw my personal spin on him, but I question him, like, asked him about what happened and everything. And it showed me, like, if I lived over there, if I was a different color, would I be treated different? So there's definitely, growing up in the system, you could see the disparity between the color, but everywhere I've been, there was always, there was white kids wherever I went. There was white adults wherever I went. I have a lot of friends that were white. So is it the law applied the same? Definitely not. But they're not immune to the system either. They're poor. There's a lot of poor white people doing
If,
live, doing
yeah.
sentence, they're MacLaren Hall, juvenile halls. And that was the one thing I noticed, the ones that were incarcerated, they usually didn't come from the affluential places. The ones that did usually had a very small sentence for a big crime.
Or they spent less time in foster care or in because MacLaren Hall was supposed to be like that temporary placement before you went to foster care or reunited with your family, if that was even a possibility. But if there was someone that had money, usually there was mental illness that resulted in the children being removed, or there was drug abuse or something of that nature. But they had some type of resource to be able to get the child out of MacLaren or into a better environment, and not just whoever was available as far as a foster family. So I just wonder for you, when you were removed, because I did hear you mention that you have siblings.
Yes.
Now, were you the only one that went to MacLaren Hall versus your siblings?
Yes. So I was the oldest of 4 siblings, and I have a different father. My father abandoned me from birth. My sister, my 2 brothers' father, they always had that side of their family. I had zero contact with my father's side of my family. So when we were removed, because they were same father, same mother, from what I was told later in life, they were kept together. They went to a foster home, like a temporary foster home, and then their father's mother was able to take them and get custody. Excuse me.
Okay.
I went in the back of a cop car to MacLaren Hall, and and of course, when I'm that age and when it's happening, I know nothing. I don't know where they're at. I was more worried about them than I was myself at the time. I was like, man, where's my sister and brothers? I'm supposed to take care of them, and I just, I was worried. I remember being worried. I don't remember too much, but there's certain things that stuck with me for the rest of my life, and that was one of them. I didn't understand, after, like, why did they take me there? Like, why did I go there? And I hated it there. I remember crying. Like, I wouldn't cry in front of people when I was a little kid. Today, I cry at any movie, but back then I wouldn't cry. And I remember only when people weren't looking, and I was in that room, in that cell, at night, and I remember crying. I can remember that, and I can remember hearing other kids crying. I could hear the staff yelling at them and opening the door and threatening them. And I remember that. I remember like going outside to this big yard, and I remember they had bikes, but I don't remember very much about the place. Like, it's something like blocked it out in my head.
Well, when you say they opened up the cell, so they put you in a room that kind of resembled a cell to you at that age?
At that age, I didn't. It was a room. It was a locked room. When I started going to juvenile hall, they used to scare me. When I left MacLaren Hall, when I did wrong and I got in trouble and I got punished, my family, my grandma mostly, they would tell me, "You're gonna go to juvenile hall. They're gonna beat you up when you get there." Like that was the threat, so I wouldn't do wrong. And I remember when I went to juvenile hall the first time, my first time they locked me in a cell, I said, "This reminds me of MacLaren Hall." I was in East Lake Central Juvenile Hall in LA, and I was on unit CD, on what they call the girls' side. And I remember and it's real old. It has the old furnaces in there, but I remember walking in saying, "This looks like MacLaren Hall. I remember this place like this." So in my mind, it connected to. So I think I refer it to like as a cell, because if somebody got to lock me in there and I can't get out when I want, that's a cell.
And MacLaren Hall was run by juvenile probation first. So it was run like a jail. And it wasn't until like mid 80s when Department of Children and Family Services was created that LA County DCFS took over, but initially it was run like a prison.
And I never knew that. Like I don't, when I left MacLaren Hall, we never talked about it. In my family, never talked about it. I never told nobody. I left it. Whatever happened, I blocked it out. It wasn't until I started doing work on myself, many years in prison, being in group, that I started getting asked about, like, how did you grow up? Like, what was going on with you? Like, what do you think led you to this? And I never blame, till this day, I never blame my mom. I never blame nobody. I always take responsibility. Well, I don't say always did, but when I started changing, from that point, I take responsibility for I know if I did something wrong, I chose to do it. And I had to learn, like, there was influences, there was other things going on. There was some things I had no control over that I think created the perfect storm for me to make bad decisions. Like, I get that part. Other people have their hands in and could have done better, didn't do better. The system could have did better, they didn't do better. And for a long time I used to think, man, the system's broken. It's broken. I preached it. The system's broken. Eventually I got to a point, I said, the system ain't broken. The system's doing exactly what it was designed to do. The thing is, it wasn't designed for us.
Exactly.
It was designed to serve the people that it created, and that's why it doesn't work for us. We have the misconception, or I do, that it's broken. And once I understood that, it was like this clarity, and I was like, okay, now we could go. Now I could go and talk about it. Once I take responsibility, and I could clearly see what whose hand has it in there, and follow the money trail, and who's this benefiting, because it's a losing game. Like, everything I've seen the system has created, I've seen, like, why don't they just do this? It would be better. And then when you go and try to do something about it, there's so much resistance. I work in the Department of Corrections now. So I came home from prison and got hired to go back and work in there. So I work as a certified drug and alcohol counselor in the prison right now.
Okay.
I teach 3 classes. And, that was a big decision for me to make. Do I go back and work within a system that I lived in for so long, that I seen is not, it's not doing what it can do. And that's the way I serve it up in the class. That's the way I serve it up. Like, you have to care more about yourself than the people saying that they care about you. And once you are able to do that, you can recognize the helpers in your life. You take what you got to take and you make it work in your own life, and you move forward, because at the end of the day, man, you have to do all changes, self-change. And that has been some gift that I've been able to bring, that I learned the hard way. I had to learn through experience.
And we aren't taught discernment. So
No.
what you're teaching is discernment, because I know in my own household, we were taught to, if you cared about someone, you lent a hand, you saw about them if they were sick, if they needed anything, if that was your friend, family, loved one, whatever, you kind of, made yourself available for that person. But I was not taught how to discern who was worthy of that and who wasn't.
Yes.
And so, especially being a woman, a lot of girls are taught to be people pleasers. Be good, be kind, this and that, but they're not teaching us how to say no and be okay with saying no, and don't worry about who's going to get mad, or, who's going to talk about you because you didn't want to do what they wanted you to do. We weren't taught about manipulation, or narcissistic personalities, and, all this stuff that we're hearing now, and gaslighting, and, all these terms that are kind of normal now. We were not privy to any of that type of, I guess, mental health, emotional health kind of talk. It was just like, be good, if someone asks you to do something, you just do it, And I was going to ask you what attracted you to the gang lifestyle, because growing up in South Central LA, I came to LA like in the 80s. So I was born in Chicago, moved to Atlanta, and then here. And so my parents had separated and they got back together, and my dad was here. So my mom and I came here with him, and I've been here ever since. But growing up in South Central, like mid 80s, that was height of the gang era, gang activity. So I was exposed to a lot of that just from living in certain neighborhoods, going to school with certain gang members, taking the bus. You know, you're on the bus, either public transportation or school bus. So you're engaging with this culture. And then the music was perpetuating that too.
Yeah.
So outside looking in, you're like, oh, this looks fun. Oh, I have a group of friends. We care about each other, or they got my back, blah, blah, blah. But you don't really know what it is until you get involved with it. So what attracted you initially to that lifestyle?
I got into the gang when I was 13. I was scared to get in the gang at first because my mom used to always, my mom always preached against it. You better not get in the gang. You better not. I better not find out, or I'm gonna kick your ass, So I was, I love my mom. My mom was, she was, I always wanted to protect her. I always wanted to believe her, but I was always around gang members as a kid, growing up. I seen what they do. I seen everything. When there was a lot of violence in my home, there was violence in my community, domestic violence, there was drugs. So I think I had gotten to the point where I had normalized so much of that lifestyle in my own life. But whenever I did anything like in school, if I fought at school, I would get in trouble when I got home from my grandma. Like everything my grandma was telling me, it was like I was getting punished for like doing what I had seen. So I'm like, I'm supposed to be a good fighter. I'm supposed to be tough. I'm not supposed to cry in front of people. I'm not supposed to snitch. Like these things were like, and today I could explain it. Then I would never be able to explain it. But looking back, it's like all these messages I got compared to what I was living in, they didn't match. When the other gang members, when I would be around them, they would embrace me. Like I would be rewarded for how much I was willing to do for the gang. If I would go fight, and I fought good, it was like, man. But if I went home and they found out I fought, I would get in trouble. I'm like, but and I'm watching them fight. I'm watching the drugs out there. If I could get drugs, if I use drugs, it's like I'm embraced. So there was a reward there, and the camaraderie, the unity, the backup, the notoriety of it. Like I seen like these guys have respect.
They're hood famous.
Yeah, they were hood famous. Like, man, like nobody's talking about these other guys. Like because I had friends that were straight. They didn't mess around like that. And I started noticing, like, when I started hanging out before I got in. And I started noticing that my friends' parents would tell them, I don't want you hanging around with Gilbert. Don't go to his house no more. And that happened like fast. Like within a year, like I couldn't go to their house. They weren't supposed to be at my house. We weren't supposed to be hanging out. But the other friends, man, I'm out on this. I would stay out all night. I remember I would come home. I was into breakdancing before I got into the gangs. So the breakdancing, my grandma thought it was gang related. She was older. She was born 1937. So I'm in the 80s. I'm breakdancing. But when I would dress like the little breakdancer, I wore like the black and white, my hat sideways, whatever I did, my grandma would be like, turn your hat right. You ain't wearing that, and I was like, man, I want, this is what's going on at my age. Like, hip-hop was big when I was a kid. And I wanted to be part of it, and I danced. I was pretty good at it. And then, the police were breaking that up. That was like, and there was nothing going on illegal, but they
a group of guys are, in the huddle, then it's like, oh, something's going on.
Yeah, and they started like they would pull up and break us up. Get out of here, we're gonna arrest you. And they would take the little cardboard from us. They would make us turn off the radio. The schools banned everything. No radios in the school no more, no cardboard. We better not catch you out here dancing. And they banned it.
Doesn't that sound crazy as hell?
Yeah, I'm like, dude,
you're dancing.
Yeah, and I played sports and I danced. And then once that was taken from me, it was like I started noticing like a few of my friends were going towards the gang. They were like, "Come on, man! Like we're gonna ditch. We're gonna go over here, hang out, and drink." And I'm like, "Damn, I'm gonna drink." My family, like, they drink, they party, like that's all they're like. I seen it like, man, I'm about to be a adult. I make my own decisions. I'm not gonna listen to my grandma no more. She ain't my mom. And I don't got a dad. I don't gotta listen to nobody. No man's gonna tell me what to. I grew up around all women. I'm like, ain't no man gonna tell me what to do. So, my beliefs started shifting, and at the acceptance, and I was like, this is more like home out here than it is. Like my home is my home. This matches it, but I get in trouble when I play it out at home. And I went to the streets, man. One day I was drinking. The homies were getting me drunk, and they kept calling me out. You're scared. You're scared to get in. Because they court you in by 3 guys jumping. So they were like, we're gonna go outside, and you're gonna have to fight for your own. We're gonna see how tough you are. And one day, I had one enough drinks. We walked outside, and I fought 3 guys, man. And when they did drop me, I got back up and I was embraced, and they told me, you get up, man. Don't ever let anybody get you down, And from that point forward, writing on the walls and hanging out and stealing out of the stores and stealing bikes. It just got worse, stealing cars, carjacking, and there's weapons involved now. I went from drinking to smoking marijuana to trying out coke in the 80s. The crack cocaine bust blew up. They're selling crack in my neighborhoods. I'm out there buying, double ups just to get a little bit of funds in my pocket to buy a dime of weed or something, or buy like, my Nike Cortez or my Chuck Taylors, the Ben Davis. Like I had to change, I was changing how I dressed, so I had to pay that. Like they were gonna buy me those clothes. My grandma,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you ain't gonna be a gang member in this house, so I had to hide that stuff. When I was 13. But once I went to juvenile hall, I went in there and I wasn't scared no more because the people I knew from the streets,
they were in there.
They were there, and I was like, this is cool. Like I know these guys. These are my homies, And the fear was gone, and so was the fear of, my fear was I didn't want to get caught from the police, but my fear was more the way the police, like, because I got beat up. When I was 16, they split my head open, they knocked me out, broke all the bones in my wrist, the LA sheriffs, and then dropped me off at my home after they did it. Without, they took me to the hospital, stitched me up, put a cast, and then took me home and dropped me off. So, and they used to pick me up, shake me down, take me to my enemy's neighborhood, and then honk the horn and yell my neighborhood and take off.
Wow.
These are the East LA sheriffs, right? And so I was like, I'm more scared of what these guys are gonna do to me. Like, just take me to jail, man. I'm not tripping. Just lock me up, man. Just don't beat me up, or don't get me killed, man. If you take me over there, like, these guys are gonna kill me over there. And so that's the kind of life. I'm a kid. I'm 13, I'm 14, I'm 15, 16, like
very formative years, because there's something about that 14. I don't know what it is. Because that's when you start really trying to, as the old people say, smell yourself at 14. Like you think you're grown and you want to be an adult and try all this stuff. But what do you think made the streets voice louder than your grandma?
I felt like I belong. I remember I used to tell people, I don't belong in school. Like, school's not for me. I'll never go to college. I'll never graduate. Like, I don't want to go to school. I don't like people. I don't like counselors. I don't like teachers. I don't like nobody with a tie. I don't want nothing to do with, like, that. To me, that was the system. And I was like, I hate them. I don't want nothing to do with them. I don't care about principles, and I'm not scared of getting my ass whipped. So, like, if Like, you're gonna have to bring it to me. You're gonna have to beat me up. I'm a little guy. I'm probably gonna lose more than I win, but you're gonna have to like. And I wasn't scared at home either. Like, I had got to the point where like, I don't care if you hit me with a stick, a broom, whatever you hit me with. Like, it's not gonna hurt me. You're not gonna hurt me. I don't care no more. I just don't care. And when I went to the street, I felt the street cared. No, when I got locked up, like, my homies, like, my family's not here. Like, it's a misconception. I know that. Like, today, I know that. But when I was that age, I was like, if I'm on the street, my homies are there. If I get locked up, I don't care where you put me, any cell you put me, like any institution, my homies are gonna be there. If anything happens to me, they're the ones that are gonna be right here. Everybody else is telling me, don't call me. Don't call me. I ain't gonna get in your shit. Don't call me. The police pick you up. And I surely ain't gonna be there when they jump you or when they do. And and it's all of those beliefs feed the system. They all do. That kind of thinking, I truly believe, is by design.
Yeah.
It's by design. And the more I thought I was resisting, the more the system was living in my head. And it got so strong that I couldn't see it. It wasn't until many years, these great teachers that came into my life, these great mentors, these great leaders that came. Some of them weren't people. They were out of a book. Locked up. I'm in the hole. I'm somewhere by myself, and I have nobody to talk to. And that's where it came from. These great leaders came into my life when I needed them, and they started to guide me and point those things out. You have to look at these things because, Gilbert, nobody's going to come in with a cape and save you. Nobody's going to there's no magic wand. There ain't no magic pill. It's just you, man. You have to face this reality. And when I did, then I realized how much I didn't know. I went back to school. I went to college. I graduated high school in prison. I graduated college in prison. I went and got my AOD in prison. Like, all my accomplishments were in a place designed to break me.
What's the AOD?
It's alcohol and other drug counselor. I'm a certified drug alcohol counselor through cadet. So and now I found something that I was good at. I'm now in front of a class wearing state blues. With other men that are like me, that come from places like me, and I'm in there telling them just like I'm telling you. Bro, I've been in MacLaren Hall. I've been in the juvenile hall. I didn't skip your age. I didn't skip the drug you're on. And I was like, look, like, you have to believe that. You have to look at that. Until you do, you're gonna be just like me, doing the same thing, expecting like something else to
result. The definition of insanity.
It's just not going to happen. No, ain't nobody ever come, no counselor in prison ever came and knocked on my door to see how I was doing. Not once. They had a title. Nobody ever came. I did meet people, part of the administrative people in the prison, very, 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 very few that did position me, put me in places, transfer me, give me jobs that I was able to excel. I was able to grow there, and I was able to give pay it forward. And that has helped me tremendously. And that's what I do today, and I really believe that there's a lot of things by design that are they're there, man. There's some ugly stuff out there. There's some stuff people do. Excuse me. There's some stuff I see people do today. And I call them on it, and they just, and I tell them, look, man, I know, how I know? You know why I'm telling you? It's because I've been on the other side of that. There's some people that don't know my background, and I've been in trainings, I've been in meetings, I've had people in my own home, and we're talking, and they start putting down people like me. Oh, man, he's a dope fiend. Oh, he's a dope fiend. They did drugs. And I'm like, guess what, man? I did drugs. Man.
Oh, you're different. You're different.
You know what they told me? You're a unicorn. You're different, though. And I told them, nah, bro, what it is that the system that I talk about lives in your head and you can't see it. You reinforce it by pointing your finger at me. I'm like, you know that there's a story behind the story.
Have you ever heard of D.L. Hughley's book, The Most Dangerous Place for a Black Man is Inside a White Person's Head?
No, I never heard that.
I mean, and even when you're talking about just you gathering and dancing and that being seen as, oh, they're up to something. It's the same way in the corporate world.
Mm-hmm.
We as Black people and black and brown people in corporate, if we're standing in the break room, you know, if it's like 3 of us or we're near the water cooler and we see some white person come in, we're like, you know, like let's disperse because they're gonna think we're trying to take over, or you know, they're gonna think we're trying to do something shady or whatever. So it's still those racist thoughts permeate every form of life. And you know, to your point about things being by design, you know, me growing up in South Central, of course, I had friends, homies, whatever, went to jail, went to prison, and they were always, I guess they were bored, and they would always call my parents' house and we reconnect some kind of way. I knew them from like high school, junior high, and they wind up in jail or in prison. And I can't remember if it was Soledad or Calipatria, one of them. It was far as hell. That's all I remember. It was far. And me and one of my girlfriends went to see one of my friends. And I felt like, I don't know about her, but I felt like they were treating us like we were the prisoners.
Yeah.
And, you know, they put it so far and they had you jump through all these hoops. And I'm like early 20s. I had no criminal background or nothing, but of course they screen you and make sure that you're suitable to visit. But I mean, they put us in this like cage-like kind of thing when we first got there. So all the visitors go into this space. It's not even a room because it's outside the prison, but it's a cage. And then you go into this area, and then you get, you know, they search you and the whole thing. And my friend that was with me, she had a bra that had a wire, I guess.
Yeah.
So when they wanted her, it was going to, so then she had to go into this room. I was like, okay, this is too much. This is too much. And then even though I had the date of when I was visiting, they didn't go get my friend until, I don't know how long they had us waiting. He was like doing something else. Then he had to go take a shower. I mean, the time is just running out. So by the time he actually gets to the visitor room, we didn't have that much time left. And I was like, see, they don't want you to visit. You know,
discourage you.
Right. Yeah. They definitely discourage you from coming because I was like, this is too much.
Yeah, most of all my time I spent up in Northern California. So I was never in Southern California serving any of my time. And it seems like if you're from Northern California, you're gonna spend your time in Southern California. You know, it's like they put you in the farthest place they can get, you know, and what does that do? Like everything by design in there is to separate you, discourage, you know, communication, contact, you know, everything in there. It's like anything you have is so that it can be taken.
And that's what abusers do. They isolate you from your friends and your family. So, you know, the Department of Corrections is just another level of abuse.
Definitely. And it's like we as taxpayers pay $71,000, if not more, for a year for somebody incarcerated in the Department of Corrections. Now the taxpayers, you know, now we're starting to find out more about this stuff, and then what, like 67 to 73% recidivate within 3 years with a new felony. Something's going on. That R behind CDCR is there's like that. There's an issue there. There should be a problem. People should be pissed off because they're paying that, because everything in prison is done by us. We do if there's an electrician, it's one free staff, and he has a you know, incarcerated people working for them. We're doing all the work and they're supervising. The plumbing, we make all the clothes, the sheets, the blankets, the pillows. We sweep everything in that prison. We clean everything in that prison. I mean, you name it, we're the ones doing it. What are they paying for? Where's this money going? Right? It doesn't cost that much to house somebody. Now, what if we didn't work? What if we didn't go to work and said, hire your own plumbers? Because ain't no plumber going to come in here and work for minimum wage. Most of us work and don't get paid. When we do get paid, you're making 8 cents an hour, maybe 17 cents an hour. You know, you get the better jobs, maybe up to about $1 an hour. What is this? Where's this money
Where's
going?
the money going?
Where is the money going, right?
And that's not the private prisons. That's just the state prison.
That's just the state. That's just the state, right? Now, as soon as somebody like me starts saying that, oh, here we go. He commits a crime and then he's complaining about the situation. You're lucky you have clothes on right now. You're lucky you have all of this stuff right here, and I'm lucky. Wow, that's the best answer you got, huh?
Now, who's the one saying that, you know, you're lucky and you shouldn't be complaining?
The correctional officers, and most of the staff that work in there, I still hear it even out here. Like, you guys are fortunate in there. You get your education paid for. You could go to medical for free. You get all this stuff for free. Like, why are you complaining? You committed a crime. You hurt somebody.
But
like,
you can't even work the first how many years when you first get in. It's not like, okay, I'm in prison. Let me immediately start working or going to school or whatever. Don't you have like a time frame by which you can't even do anything when you first get in there?
It depends on the level you go into prison. So if you get like a big sentence, like a life or like a large number, you're gonna go to level 4. Level 4 is the high security. If you get to high security, good luck if you get a job within about 4 to 5 years. Wow. You're gonna be locked down in a cell most of the time. No job, no school. There's not much to do. Even the little bit of jobs they're scarce. And the people that have been working there for years. So they're not going home. They're not losing their job. Unless they go to the hole or they die, you know, they're not going nowhere. So, yeah, now you go to lower level 1, level 2, you know, they're going to put you out there on the yard picking up papers, sweeping a broom somewhere, working in the kitchen. I mean, and they're like, hey, do this, you know, you're in there busting your butt all day, and there's no incentive. I mean, there's almost zero incentive. It's so bad that the kitchen workers, they can't take nothing out of the kitchen. They throw away any leftovers. The food gets thrown in the trash. They cannot take nothing back. So they have to anticipate how many people, because you don't have to go to the chow hall to get your food. So they don't know if you got a population of 4,000, 6,000 people incarcerated, they have to anticipate that all those people are going to come to the chow at breakfast or dinner. Whoever doesn't come that day, whatever's left over, they throw it away. Well, the food is so bad in there also is that when there's like food product like chicken, any kind of meat product or like cheese, the guys that work in there, they steal it. They're taking it out, you know, they're taking all the meat out, they're bagging it up, and then they find, you know, there's a will, there's a way. They sneak it out. There's ways to get snuck out of the kitchen. They sneak it out, and then they go sell it on the tier. So I get to chow. I'm walking with my plate, and there's no meat in it. There's either no cheese. There's like I'm lacking what I'm supposed to be getting. And oh man, I used to get me so angry because I'm hungry. And if you don't have somebody sending you in money to buy food, and which is way overpriced, do you think inflation's bad out here? The inflation in there is like 10 times worse.
And again, like you said, where's the money going?
Where is it go? Who is making the money in the commissary in there? Who owns the package companies?
And the phone calls, the phone cards.
Global Tellink does the phone. How much money have they made on the phone calls? Like, where is all this money? The package companies owned by the retired officers are able to buy in.
Mm.
They own it. So when I got to prison, we used to get packages sent from your family. They could get a box, put 30 pounds, up to 30 pounds.
And now you have to go through like vendors, approved vendors, because I wanted to be an approved vendor because I was selling Avon and stuff at the time. I said, the ladies' prison, even the men's too, could use some of the skincare stuff and stuff like that. But to be an approved vendor, you have to have a warehouse. I can't even remember what the dollar amount of merchandise you have to have. And then it's going to be inspected. Your employees have to be screened, and they have all these stipulations for you to be an approved vendor. But yeah, I remember back in the day when people could just put a box together and send it.
And they said, well, we can't do that because they're bringing in drugs. I'm like, till this day, they still tell me they're bringing in drugs. I'm all, how do you know that? Not correction officers, but other people. How do you know that? Well, that's how they get the drugs in. I'm like, some of the drugs do come into the visiting. Some of the drugs did come into the package. A very small amount. Guess where the largest amount came from? They're like, who? I said, from the staff that work in there. The phones and all that stuff, that's what it. No, does it? Yes, I know. I knew people that were in there that were doing it. So unless you've been in there and you could tell me that I'm wrong, then you're just telling me what somebody else told you. And I guarantee you, whoever told you has something to do with the people that work in there. They don't want that. That's a myth. That's the myth in there, But I'm like, we'd be on lockdown and all of a sudden there's all these drugs on the yard. I'm like, there's no visiting. There's no packages.
So how's it getting in here?
Where did all this drugs come? And they said, well, it comes in from the free staff.
Now, what's the free staff?
Free staff are non-custody staff. So they have like people that work in the kitchens. There's people that work like in the vocation area, the teachers education. They're considered they're considered for what we call free staff. They're not custody. Custody are correctional officers or peace officers.
So free staff could be your nurses.
Yes.
That's the outcome.
And that's usually where they blame it on them. Oh, it's them. I'm all, well, let's go see the arrest. Let's go see who gets caught with this. Because there's a record. And even that there's ways that they hide those numbers. If you come to work and you get caught, it's like, leave, quit, don't come back. There's no record of it. It didn't happen. Right? But if I arrest you and I take you in and you're an officer, that's a number against us. So there's a lot of ways to hide the truth. We can't believe just because he didn't get caught, just because even though they got caught, I'm saying just because there wasn't a charge, like the story didn't get told.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, okay.
Yeah, and it happens a lot. It happens a lot. There's, like I said, the majority of people in there is pretty corrupt, but there was some people. I have to be honest. There was some people in there that their humanity came through them. Their humanity came through them. There was very, very few officers. There was some administrative people that, they really, I could tell, you could tell when somebody's real. So you could tell when somebody cares, there was staff that communicated with me, way outside of the limitations that they get put on. And it's very, very far and in between. I had officers open my door when I was cooking or painting. I was an artist in there, or drawing, and they would open my door and talk to me sometimes for 20, 30 minutes, and come in there, hey, what are you doing, and they would communicate with me, and they would tell me things, and they would ask me how I'm doing, There was people that did do that. There was some administrative people, like I said, they told me, Gilbert, you don't belong here. I looked your history up. You don't belong here. And they would tell me, I'm going to get you transferred. You're going to go somewhere else. You're going to go work over here. And they put me on buses and they moved me around. You know, they checked on me over the years. They would call and check. Hey, how's Gilbert? You know, put Gilbert on the three-way, or not on three-way, but on the speakerphone. And like, hey, you're still working, you're still clean, you're not getting in trouble. No, man, I'm good. I'm doing good.